morning, everybody. Happy day 3 of the global meltdown. Welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's environment editor, Nada Farood. Morning, Nada.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Now, this is the People's Paper Review, everybody. So get into the comments, ask us your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Those of you listening later on podcast are just going to have to ask yourselves whether you can put your house on stilts. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on revelations only reportable after his guilty plea in order to protect a trial and not as a result of a cover-up, that Southport killer Axel Rudikabana was able to buy knives for the attack on Amazon. There's more on that in the paper, along with plans to speed up better age restrictions on online blade purchases from the Home Secretary, which I'm sure you will have heard about. But as Nada's with us, we're going to turn to a different crime and some shocking images today on page 29 of the Mirror, which show a country lane just filled with fly tip rubbish. There's so much of it, they've had to send a drone up to get a picture. Nada, this is your story. Can you take us through it? How on earth did it get there?
So what the local council in Lichfield in Staffordshire thinks happens is that several sort of lorries drop this in the middle of the night. Now they're appealing for any dash cam footage, any vehicles that were sort of nearby at the time, anyone who's got any evidence, because they just come along and they dropped it in the middle of the road, completely blocking it for any sort of residents and other businesses trying to get down the lane. This is a massive issue. This is not just one-off in Lichfield. This is happening all around the country. Like the latest figures show, over 1 million fly tipping incidents happen every year. The latest figures are just about to be released in the next month, so we'll see whether this is decreased or not. We're probably thinking it's probably going to be around the same, and it's a big issue because of what do we do with our waste? Recycling is a big issue. What do we do with our problem? But the biggest issue with fly tipping is building material. I think 60% of stuff that is fly tipped around the country on lanes, beauty spots, parks, beaches, etc., is building material.
Right. Well, I live in a country lane. It's not quite like that one, but we've probably had 3 or 4 fly tipping incidents this year already. And it's usually something like a pickup truck rather than a big lorry dumping stuff out the back, because we're near enough the village that everyone knows that the lane is here and it's a through route and you can just belt off straight away. It's not like it's a dead end or something. And it's quiet and there's no street lights and that sort of thing, which is why people want to come and dump down here, I expect. And it's always building rubbish. It's never anything else. So it's stuff that that someone was had to put on a commercial lorry of some sort. Someone's asked someone to come along and clear stuff away, and that's what's been dumped. I mean, what do you think, everybody? Have you got a problem with fly tipping in your area? Have you seen this increase or decrease? What happens when you've got something bulky that you need to get rid of, building waste and so on? It is a question that people have to try and find a way through. And they're just looking at some images there of a great big digger picking up some of this waste and getting it into a truck so it can be taken to the tip where it should have been taken in the first place. Of course, there are facilities, aren't there, Nada, for getting rid of this stuff. So why aren't the commercial people in the lorries taking it there?
So this looks like it's like on an industrial scale. It's probably more likely come from some sort of building company. I think if we sort of probably like that. So there were costs linked to taking your items to tips, particularly on an industrial scale. Now that should be not a reason to dump it at all. I think on a residential scale, they are quite high, these fees. In some areas it varies from local authority to local authority. But ultimately, I think what the biggest issue is here is that the penalties for people who are dumping on this sort of scale are so low. Also, only like 1 in 500 fly tipping incidents ends up in a prosecution. So there really isn't much of a deterrent at the moment. So we've got 2 issues: deterrent and the fees and linked to them. And should local authorities make it free? Well, it's it costs to deal with our rubbish. These are things we sort of need to look at across the country. And should there sort of be a national system, because each local authority has a different set of rules? That's another issue to look at.
Exactly, and it does seem that, there must be a sensible way through it, because if the council, has to spend money dealing with waste that it gets brought to its official site, it also has to spend money cleaning up stuff that's fly tipped out in the middle of nowhere. And probably has to spend a bit more per ton doing that than it does. It has to deal with them at the waste site eventually anyway. So it's probably not safe. I don't know how much, money is really being saved. Do we have any idea how much it costs to deal with the fly tipping that we see? There's a million tons.
It's really difficult to put it into complete, but it's millions of pounds, and it's sort of on, some of it's individual level. For example, if you're dumping it on private land, that person's responsible. Farmers are, outraged by these incidents, and because they also say the 1.8 million incidents don't really take into account incidents that are happening on their land as well. What this does is not only blight the environment, obviously we can see it, it looks terrible. Sometimes, you see mattresses and all sorts of other items just scattered around beauty spots and parks and things, but also the implications that it has for the environment, for wildlife. If there are elements where small mammals, voles, hedgehogs, etc., can get in and get trapped. It can also impact food production if it's dumped on a farm as well, and stop farmers from irrigating land, from planting crops, etc. So there's massive implications, not just on the cleanup, but the wider impact on other people and whose responsibility it becomes.
And what's the kind of deterrent? I mean, someone who's just tipped a small pickup truck of something, I can imagine is going to get away with not very much. But someone who's like this, who's just dumped a pile of rubbish which is 40 foot long and 10 foot high, it must be tons and tons and tons. We had an issue not far away from me, actually, in Kent a little while ago, with someone just for years dumping stuff in a wood and absolutely poisoning the waterways and everything else. And it's higher than your head. What kind of deterrent do they face? What are the likely penalties for that?
It really depends on what evidence they can get, because I think the Environment Agency will be really keen to find out who's responsible and if they're doing this elsewhere. So if they can piece together all these cases, a bigger case could be brought together and there could be a bigger fine. I have seen some in the past where there have been fines of thousands of pounds, but on the whole, they're pretty small, so that it's still not much of a deterrent. I think one viewer, has just cropped up with a question saying that tips are too expensive, and I do agree that on a residential level it's difficult. It's difficult because it does cost, but unfortunately, I think it's what I said at the beginning was, what are we going to do with all our stuff? We keep creating all this mess, and I think we need to get to a system where we're reusing and recycling more, and not just trying to just throw away our items and hope someone else deals with it.
Well, exactly. We've had several people there all saying that the tips are rip-off and it costs a lot of money. I know of councils where, for example, they will charge you £10 for a bulky item to be picked up, so like a fridge or a washing machine that's knackered, you need to get rid of. But the minimum charge is 30 quid. So unless you've got a whole bunch of things to get rid of, it's just not worth asking the council to come and pick it up, because if it's paying 30 quid to get rid of your dishwasher, it just doesn't make any sense in a way. I had a neighbour yesterday say she'd booked a bulky collection. Is there anything I wanted to get rid of, and come in on it with her to help pay the fee?
That's a really sensible suggestion. Maybe you can get together with a neighbour, and if you have got lots of stuff together, for example, there are charities that also take your things for free, like the British Heart Foundation. I had an old sofa a year ago. They came and got it for free and then sold it, and the money goes to the charity. So there's lots of different schemes that you can use if you have things that you think are actually reusable and will be of some value to somebody else.
It's a case of finding them, though, isn't it? And because obviously there's a huge amount of this waste is commercial that's dumped, as we've just seen, but there's almost half which is going to be domestic, and it's people who've got a washing machine or a fridge freezer or a sofa or a mattress and can't be asked, frankly. And there's a lot of laziness involved. I don't want to go to the tip, I'm just going to dump it. And to be fair, to dump it, you've still got to put it in a car and drive it down the road most of the time. So and it's about whether those people, whether they know about the alternatives, whether there are easy recycling options that they can actually access and get to, whether it's advertisement, even building waste, even concrete can be recycled. But perhaps there needs to be some kind of an incentive where actually, if you recycle something, you get a micro payment. you get a quid back, or 5 quid, or whatever it might be. And then it's in everyone's best interest. And also, of course, not going through washing machines like they're running out of fashion, Well, how do we fix this, do you think, Nod? Is it a case of just having better deterrent, or no fees at the tip, as some of our viewers think, or better, smaller fees, or perhaps, incentives to actually use recycling facilities, or better awareness? What is it?
I think it's a combination. I definitely would like to see more of a campaign from local authorities about recycling and how when you start reusing the materials that we've actually got. So I think there needs to be a big campaign on this. There's so many items that everything has got value. Like you say, should there be a little payment? Why not? Why not take the stuff that you've got? If you can sort it into piles, make it easy for this process to happen. They all have value, as you say. Even concrete has value. So we need to sort of change our total mindset about our items. I do think deterrence is a really good way of sending out a clear message, because, as you say, if you put it in the back of a lorry and you're dumping it, you've actually got the transport to get it somewhere. Why not just take it to where it actually needs to be? The effort is sort of there to get rid of it. Let's make sure it goes to the right place. And yeah, we do need to look at the fees. I think they need to be not penalising, the average person. But if you've got, industrial scale material, you're going to have to pay for it. I'm sure it's part of a business. This needs to be soaked up within it. You can't just dump it and expect someone else to clear it up.
Yeah, there are options out there, everybody. But I was just thinking that what we need is a public service almost campaign. We don't have public service adverts anymore, but some kind of campaign where a person is pictured next to the total number of washing machines they go through in their life, and tumble dryers and other white appliances, the amount of concrete they generate, the amount of batteries and crap that they deal with, and it's just for a lifetime. If you just picture that next to a normal human being in this country, you would just be like, well, okay, I'm going to recycle more, because that's horrifying. Leslie says, as a disabled person, I was told I need to take bulky items to a collection point to save money. How am I supposed to get a tree stump out there or on a bus? It doesn't work for everybody. And there does need to be some options, doesn't there? Where people can have things sorted out for them. It's getting ridiculous. But I think some of the targets councils are given in terms of, minimising the amount that goes to landfill, they then impose these charges to try and discourage people from doing it. And then it just gets dumped in a country lane, and we're back where we began.
We also need a better, I was going to say, Susie, we also need a better system into, like, when something breaks, we automatically think about throwing it away. But if your washing machine has gone on the blink, the first thing should be, can it be fixed? Is it just a small part? It might cost 20 quid or 50 quid or whatever. You need to put it into value, and is it worth fixing? But I think that we need to get out of the mindset of just throw it away, buy something new, because often things can be fixed just for a very small cost.
Yeah, your local neighbourhoods, groups, WhatsApps, Facebooks, everything else will have recycling and eco pages where they go. And you'll be amazed. I've got to have a new kitchen sink shortly. I'm going to put the old one on there because someone will have it, and it might as well have some use out of it. And when I had to have, I had a really old, like 80s, 70s, 80s conservatory that was leaky and falling apart, old plastic, totally horrid and not even watertight anymore. I put it on a Facebook page, and someone came along who was a window fitter, and he's often getting asked to fix up these old conservatories that they don't make the parts for anymore. So he took it for bits, and he took it all down for me in a weekend, and otherwise it would have just gone in the skip. So there's always someone who wants it. It's trash has value to someone, so take it with a pinch of salt. There's always something you can do with it. Now, today, probably for the rest of time, talking of rubbish, the biggest story is going to be the last thing that Donald Trump did. And one of the executive orders he signed in his first 24 hours in office, well, two of them actually. The first was to pull America out of the Paris Climate Accords, and another was to end Joe Biden's Green Deal. Now, Nada, this is your wheelhouse. What were they? Does it matter, considering he did it last time? And the next president can just impose all those carbon targets again, and it's only 4 years. Does it make a big difference?
Yes, it does. So I think, just for anyone who's not aware of what the Paris Agreement is, it's this binding contract that countries made to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. They do this by showing plans to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and transition to renewable energy sources. This is really important because 1.5 degree is seen as this sort of like the limit that the planet needs to before what the limit of warming before things really get bad. Now we're already seeing extreme weather patterns as a result of the climate crisis, but anything above this will be far more severe. Now, as you say, Trump has already taken out the US once before in 2016, and then Biden reversed it and went back in again. So what makes this time different? And that is quite a scary one, I think, because Project 2025 listed some details about how Trump may make sure that the next Democrat who wants to go back into the Paris Accord may not be able to do this by some sort of change in legislation. So this could be really dangerous for the future of the US. But also, I think what on an immediate issue is, what message does this send out to the rest of the world? You know, you've got China, India, there's other countries that we're trying to get in line with their climate agreements. What message does it send to them? You know, if Donald Trump can do it, can they just pull out? I mean, it puts them in line now. Yemen, Iran, and Libya are the only countries that are not part of the Paris Agreement. But I worry now, does that send out
all the nicest countries, right?
Yes. And then, you know, the US is not alone. You know, you can't isolate itself from the climate crisis. Look at what happened in LA just earlier this month. Is a prime example of the climate crisis. The hurricanes and then the flooding that came in the southern states at the end of last year. These are things that are happening on his own, backyard. The climate crisis is going to hit everywhere.
We've had wildfires in California, but we had them in Essex not long ago that suddenly sprang up. It wasn't arson. It sprang up because of the heat and the dryness, and it burnt houses to the ground. And like I said, we've got this situation now where we're coming up to that 1.5 limit, and we're starting to see extreme weather events. We've got another umpteen winter storms these days. Now they've got to have names because they are so much worse and more intense than they ever used to be. Got another one coming in this weekend. And there's this, there's this suggestion that they can just ignore it, I suppose, in a way. And that Donald Trump's view is that climate change is a scam, isn't it? And that it's all someone's done it to try and make money or something, which is a joke. And that he doesn't need to worry about it. Richard says pulling out the climate agreements is the will to go back in time while Washington is freezing and California is tinder dry. You've got this situation where, presidents have been sworn in January for centuries, and it's never really been quite so cold as it is there now. You've got snow in Louisiana, thank you very much, which is pretty near the tropics. And you've got wildfires across LA, which are being so much worse because of the winds being worse, because of the global warming, because of the hot air and everything else. There's going to come a point, though, isn't there, when Trump starts getting the bill for all this. He's going to be, as president, asked to find federal money to sort this out. He's going to get the bill for California shortly in terms of the rebuilding and the billions and billions of dollars that's going to take. Now, I dare say Trump's going to say, well, California didn't vote for me, so I don't care. They can burn. But he's going to have, he is a businessman of some sort, and he's going to have eventually, well, the cost of climate, all the climate stuff I don't want to do is X billion, but the cost of not doing it is Y billion. And he's going to have to try and square it off, isn't he, at some point?
Yes, I guess, though, that also what he's thinking is a lot of his donors are probably linked to fossil fuels. So at the moment, he thinks it's with his best interests at heart. But you're right, when the cleanup actually happens, when's the next extreme weather event? They're happening so regular these days. There'll be something else really soon. So he will be faced with this. And, is this the thing that will divide his, support, that the people in the southern states are still in the cleanup stage now? These things take months and months and months. If you've lost your home, it takes, sometimes years. There's parts of California that were hit several years ago that are still trying to rebuild. These things are not fixed quickly at all.
No, and there's this, I suppose there's the argument that the Paris Climate Accords and everything that we had weren't necessarily really pulling their weight. They weren't quite doing what they were supposed to be doing. Simon says there were 28 years of climate summits. We pumped record levels of crap into the atmosphere last year. Necessity is the mother of invention. Joe Biden had this Green Deal, lots of carbon targets and so on, and yet he drilled more than Trump did when he was last in office. When you're running a country, you have this necessity for energy and cheap energy for electoral reasons and money and to make your economy grow. And this is the deal, isn't it, that Trump's doing? Again, well, I need to make America richer because being richest in the world isn't enough at the moment. And this is how we do it.
I disagree. I think one of the big things where we went wrong in the UK is not investing enough in renewable energy, because if we had more wind farms, you know, when it came to the situation with Russia and the gas situation and how then it pumped up our energy bills, we'd have been in a way better situation. Not just to be independent for our own energy sources, but bills would come down as well, making your own electorate richer. They have then more money to spend in the economy. So we could have a whole knock-on effect. It'll also bring in jobs if you start investing in renewable energy as well, because you can build the wind turbines in your country. You can create your own energy. I think it's a really short-sighted view that maybe he thinks he can do it for a short time, but it won't last. And I think in the UK, this is something we really need to look at, because not only does it benefit the environment, obviously, with clean energy, clean air, which is going to be better for the health service. It'll mean fewer appointments. People won't be going in with as many respiratory problems, asthma. It'll free up GP appointments. It will benefit so many aspects of our life and make things cheaper for us as well.
It's about getting there, isn't it? I mean, Steve there said, Trump clearly doesn't care about his grandchildren and he's quite prepared to watch the world burn. And I think we had I don't know if we can get the comment back. There was somebody who said, Jesse, Trump is the best thing to happen to the world. Climate change is a hoax and used to fill the coffers pockets. I think you probably got 2 words there instead of when you mean one. Jesse, look out the window, mate. Climate change is a thing. And the climate change that the world has been through previously has never been so severe and has never been so sudden and has never been linked to one particular species before, right? Dinosaurs didn't cause their own extinction. We are likely to be causing our own. Now, but the issue there that you're talking about, Nada, is that it's the cost of getting to net zero, which is what's put a lot of politicians off, because it's taxes, because it's the period of transition is uncomfortable for people. I've got an oil boiler. I can't have any other. There's no gas out here. I can't have anything else. Heat pumps are insanely expensive. I'm stuck with it. I'd rather not have it, but I'm stuck with it. And the process of trying to get a better system of heating for a lot of people is going to be difficult, or whatever your energy needs might be. But one of the things that was said about Joe Biden's Green Deal, and which Keir Starmer said about Great British Energy when he launched that at a party conference a couple of years ago, is that it's a business opportunity. If you, like you say, if you are first in the queue to figure out, better batteries or cleaner energy generation or develop the tech, then you're going to be rich, aren't you? You've cashed in, because shortly the entire world is going to be wanting to buy this stuff, and if you're the one who's figured it out, then you're going to be ahead of the game. Why do you think Donald Trump hasn't figured that out? Even if you think it's a scam, there's cash to be made here. Why isn't he computing that? I mean, I realise I'm asking you to second guess Donald Trump's inner workings of his not a brain, but what do you think?
I think it's just his vested interests of donors at the moment, and it's just the money's easy. It's there at the moment. It's going to just protect the group around him. I don't think he's thinking about the future, because if he really, he's a businessman, right? He likes opportunities. If he really saw this for what it is and stopped looking at like easy cash, there's loads of big monies to be made in this. And as you're right, why not be the first? Why not try and beat China on batteries and other parts of the green economy? There is a huge amount of money to be made here. If you're patenting things and you're building all the wind turbines, there's a new steel, revolution to be had within the green economy.
Yeah. Now, you've got a comment in the paper today on, we've got this double page spread all about what Trump's been up to, but your comment in there is specifically about the Paris Climate Accords, and that he's withdrawing the US from the world's biggest collective effort to mitigate the worst impacts of this climate crisis, to try and keep the temperature down, so that although we've got wildfires, floods, and extreme temperatures, it's mostly survivable at the moment. If we go over 1.5, some of that stuff scientists say is going to be irreversible. It's going to be a self-perpetuating spiral, and then we're a bit stuck, and we've got real problems. When it comes to sort of the big oil, the future of the planet is obviously dependent a lot on his donors there, as you say, but he's only really got 2 years before there's the midterms, and then people are going to start thinking about his replacement. I suppose the danger is not Trump, but what comes after Trump, who he infects with his opinion, and whether, last time we had the rest of the world kind of stood up and said, we're going to keep the Paris Climate Accords going because he's temporary. We're going to keep on as we are. Is that going to happen this time? Is China or Europe going to step up and fill the breach? Or, if he's pulled out for the second time, are they going to start thinking, do you know what, we have to have a dash for gas too, because otherwise we're going to lose out to the States?
It's possible that China will go down that route, maybe India, but I think there's a real opportunity here for the UK really, or maybe someone in Europe to step up and be the latest sort of climate ambassador. Just because he pulled out last time, it didn't stop. There was loads of great work being done, and loads of good work will continue to be done. So that's sort of the silver lining in this, is while it sounds really depressing that the world's second biggest greenhouse gas emitter has pulled out, there is still a loads of hope, because there is amazing work being done. I mean, COPs, they do go on a bit, if I'm completely honest, and but they're absolutely vital. This diplomacy on the green agenda is absolutely vital, and never have we needed it before. We see it every day now. We've seen floods early this month in the UK. As you say, there were fires in Essex on the hottest day that the UK has ever experienced. Like 40 degrees is not normal for the UK. So all the amazing work that is being done, it will continue. But what it really needs, I think, is the UK to step up and be that climate leader.
Yeah, and of course, Trump's big issue is immigration, and climate change throws immigrants at countries that have more wealth and slightly less severe weather events, I'm afraid, Donald. So it's probably coming your way. Right, thank you everyone for taking part in those and your questions. Thank you, Nada, for explaining it so well to us. Now, we have managed to find some good news in the world, and here it is. Now, I want you to meet Ewok, a happy-looking and perfectly named Shih Tzu who was rescued by the RSPCA last year after being found neglected and with the worst matted fur ever seen by the vet who had to treat him. He had to be sedated to have more than a kilogram. And we consider how big a Shih Tzu is. A kilogram is a hell of a lot of fur. Cut off his skin, which was bleeding and sore underneath. He'd been confined for so long. He was terrified of the outside world. He's been nursed back to health. As you can see, he's now blossoming. He's enjoying belly rubs. He's ready to find his forever home, presumably for Star Wars fans who want to dress him up. Nada, is this proof that if you cut away all the crap that some idiot creates, it is possible to recover from the worst things that people can do?
I think so. I think this is a wonderful, inspiring story. I think, just also on the element of like the number of animals that are being neglected, it shows that when you put a little bit of love into something, what you can get back. I was going to mention that I've got a rescue cat who was dumped on the streets 4 years ago in Dubai, and now she's like this wonderful, loving creature, just follows me around the house. So I think it's real example of just putting love into things, and particularly on this gloomy, dark day. Well, it's very dark here in Brighton, that it sort of picked us up a bit.
Yes, exactly. And if you've found a cat that's actually going to express some love, then I bow down to you, 'cause that's a pretty rare thing to achieve. I speak as a dog person. Right, thank you, Nada, for taking us through all that. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. If you're listening on podcast, please leave us a review so other people can find us. Keir Starmer, I think, will be answering questions, Prime Minister's Question Time at 12 o'clock, which no doubt will be about that story on the front of the Mirror, Axel Rudikabana and knife crime and so on. So do tune in on those channels for that, on these channels for that. Otherwise, we will see you again next Monday for another edition of the News Agenda. Until then, everybody, stay safe, take care, don't vote Trump. Tatty bye.